Thank you, listeners, for joining us for Elko Live today. Today, we're catching up with Elko County school news with our school superintendent, C.J. Anderson. Our superintendent has recently returned from a meeting in Washington, D.C., so we didn't want to waste any time getting caught up on the significance of that meeting. And the Elko County School Board will meet in regular session on Tuesday, July 16th. So first of all, welcome, C.J. It's always great to sit across from you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me once again. Really great to be here and excited to talk about whatever you want to talk about today.
Oh, thanks, CJ. Obviously, the school board is going to be meeting tomorrow, and there are, some important issues that are ongoing and upcoming. But I think it would be great to talk about what you and other rural school superintendents in particular were able to accomplish. There were superintendents from Humboldt, Lander, White Pine counties who were all in Washington, D.C., and I guess you were talking about funding, student and staff mental health, which is also crucial, and key national initiatives. So we'll take it away with you and have you highlight some of those happenings.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great opportunity to be there. You mentioned the other superintendents that were in attendance, and we were there with Sue Kima, who is our executive director of the Nevada Association of School Superintendents. And so I am, one of my roles in the state and in this organization is I have recently been appointed as one of the governing board members from Nevada for the AASA, which is the National Association for School Superintendents. And this is something they do every year. It's called the Advocacy Conference, and we get together the day before. On Tuesday of last week, we met. We talked about kind of the varying issues that exist both at a national level and within our region. So the other states that are in our region, and we talked about kind of the big issues that are popping up around the country. Some of them are prevalent in all areas, and others they're kind of, that's their own unique challenge. But kind of what our purpose was to make sure everyone understood what the national issues are, because sometimes you have a tendency to want to just talk to someone, especially when you get a chance to talk to a senator or a congressman or congresswoman, like just tell them about all the problems, right? But you have to recognize that our national legislators can affect things at a federal level, but not all of our problems are federal in nature, and some of those things are for the state government, some of them are for our local government, some are for the Department of Education, right? So really making sure that while you have that opportunity, that brief opportunity to meet with someone, that we are united in the types of things we're bringing to their attention that we know they can hopefully directly impact at a federal level. And so we discussed various topics. You mentioned some of them, and so we kind of got all on the same page within the superintendents of our state, and we went around and talked to. So the next day, that Wednesday, we went around and had appointments with all of our representatives from around the state. So we got to meet with both of our state senators, Senator Rosen, Senator Cortez Masto. We also got to talk to all four of our folks from Congress, so with Congressman Horsford, Congressman Amadei, and Congresswoman Lee, and Congresswoman Titus. And so with exception of Congressman Amadei, we were able to meet with all of those people in person, and even though Mr. Amadei was not available, we did get to talk to some of his legislative staff to make sure that our needs were made clear to him and how he could help support. The first takeaway from meeting with all six of these folks is they care very much about the education in both our country and in the state of Nevada. Very very enthusiastic about the things they've been able to positively affect, and very concerned about the things that are ailing us. And so like I said, there's any number of things you could talk to them about. However, we did kind of narrow our focus. One of the main things we really wanted to make sure we talked to them about is in regards to the funding that's planned for FY25. We know at the state level that we're at least bracing to not anticipate any increases in funding for our schools. And so, that's hard enough in and of itself. But then there's a lot of there's a lot of talk about the federal government reducing our funding from the federal level by as much as 14%. So that would, even just for context, that means that would be below the funding levels from back in 2011. So, almost a decade and a half later, having funding levels go backwards that much, which is really a concern. And kind of, there's a lot of, there's a lot of ways you can kind of parse that out and decide, well, where's that money coming from? A big chunk of that money that we'd be losing would also be to our students who are who have the most needs. So we would see a significant reduction in Title I funding, like an elimination basically of Title II funding. And so those were real concerns for us, and it would also affect Title IV funding. The other area that really just continues to be a tough point for us as far as federal funding goes is IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So that's something that's been around for a long time, and the federal government, the initial intention when that was put into place was for the government to fund 40% of that, and here we are many years later, and we're sitting somewhere around about 13% of that being funded. And what that means doesn't mean that we don't have to it's not like, well, the money, you just do the best you can with the money. What that means is, for Elko County School District anyway, we have millions of dollars. That's multiple millions of dollars every year that have to come out of our general fund to go towards taking care of unfunded needs that are met for our students with IEPs.
Oh, CJ, I was just going to ask, these are serious funding woes and obviously concerning. Is there much surety about that 14% reduction, or, what are you hearing?
Yeah, so right now, there's, it's a lengthy, I'm not going to read the whole all the lettering of the proposal by the House, but there's a proposal by House Republicans that would cut that. And so right now, where it's in processes where they're pushing, because obviously the House is predominantly is majority Republican, and so what they're proposing right now would represent that. And so the kind of the point of that conversation was to make sure that, and we only have one of our congressmen, Amadei, is Republican. The other three are represent the Democrats. But just to make sure that they all understood what that means for our schools and how just truly detrimental that would be. Like there's no way to what's going on there is you can't cut giving services to those kids. Like you have to comply with IEPs. You have to provide services. Our students who are Title I, we have to meet the needs of students. And so this isn't, it's not a problem for those kids. It's a problem for everyone. When money's coming out of the general fund to cover those needs, then that money doesn't go elsewhere to benefit all students. And so, so that was the point of that conversation. There was no tangible thing that could have happened while we were there to have them say, oh, well, we're just going to kick that out, right? Like that's an active, ongoing conversation. But just so they understood what that would mean. And I know the federal government, it sounds like they're experiencing cuts kind of across the board. But cutting education to that extent would be very detrimental. And
especially at a time in the state where, the school districts, all 17, are being asked to further divide resources and, possibly sharing with, establishing, charter schools and other public-private partnerships, which again, nobody is saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that there aren't any additional resources being directed to education for that purpose.
Correct. Yeah. So it's, it's of deep concern and for just for clarity's sake, this doesn't apply to this school year. This would be for so they're talking now for their budget years are different on a different kind of timeline than ours are. So we're kind of projecting out to the next year and how that would impact us. It's like so many other things. It's the lack of surety of what's going to happen that kind of the unknown that's kind of ominous, and that's just kind of what it feels like right now with them talking about reducing funding by that much. And again, I mean, when you put it in context of the fact that it would be lower than 2011 levels of funding, like that's crazy. I mean, the things have only got more costly. They've only become more complicated. There have only been more requirements placed on schools since that time of things they must do and provide for students. And so it's like a tale as old as time for educators. It's like you keep adding stuff and you don't take anything away, but without adding the money. You're adding responsibilities, tasks, requirements, reporting, etc., but not removing burdens, and that's tough to swallow. And so we in our district, we're already kind of in a tough spot budgetary wise anyway, and so just thinking about this going forward and how that might be reduced for us it's definitely a cause of concern. So we haven't lost it yet. I don't want to paint gloom and doom. There's we can always be positive about how we're going to move forward, but just making sure we have that conversation so they understand that. And I don't anticipate that anything we say or do is going to make it so that there's no reductions, but to have a reduction as significant as that would be very problematic. And so that was a big topic of conversation for us. The topic of mental health is very much on the top of every legislator's mind. It's something they hear from all their constituents. I know some people, feel like the topic of mental health is taboo. They feel like it's, it's code for something else, and it's really all we're trying to do is make sure our students and our staff feel well enough to be successful and to thrive in the environment that they're in at school. And so this is a very bipartisan thing happening in the legislation right now, is making sure that mental health resources are provided. They have a lot of questions about what we are doing, what we're seeing, how we're using money. They recognize that a lot of the ESSER funds and relief funds that came in the recent past, as those funds expire, they know that a lot of those funds were used to provide mental health resources. So what are we planning on doing? What are we going to have to lose? So there's a lot of conversation there about what can they do and what do they need to do in order to make sure that we're not, your provision of mental health resources shouldn't be a temporary thing. Like that's an ongoing it's an ongoing need that people are going to continue to have. And so definitely talked with them about that as well.
C.J. Anderson is our school superintendent and our guest today as we're getting an update. He's talking about some of the legislative issues that were discussed in Washington, D.C. with the other rural school superintendents. And I'm not sure if it's the same fund, the ESSR, but some people would equate the mental health issue to that of security as well and keeping our schools, campuses secure, right?
Yeah. I mean, they definitely, I wouldn't say it's the same exact, the bills don't always kind of coincide, but they're definitely adjacent to each other. And when we talk about school safety, mental health definitely enters into the equation. And we made sure to thank and request continued support in the realm of school safety. There are various things out there, such as the COPS grant, which we've been the beneficiary of twice now, to the tune of $1 million. There's a grant that it's a BSCA, I think, but we call it the BISCA, which has helped us. So we've identified both mental health and school safety as a significant priority. It's something we've been working on now for, I think we're going into our third school year where we have funds committed to it, and we're making progress for all of our campuses to, adding cameras, adding safety and security, paying for mental health professionals, et cetera. There's a long list of things. We have a project called the School Violence Prevention Program that we've, just as a reminder, collaborated with Nevada Gold Mines and then some of these federal grants to make sure we are making progress. It's tough to, it's hard to just do anything quickly. Like it all takes time, and we're still installing those things and making progress. But that stuff doesn't happen without the help of our federal legislators and these acts at the federal level that make funds available to us. So we've been the beneficiary. We will continue to reach out to try to grab those, but we made sure to let them know, like, hey, this stuff doesn't happen without your support and help. And so, yeah.
Well, CJ, thank you. And would you say that those were the major highlights from your DC trip? I know that, again, there were so many different issues, and it's important that you're bringing those to the attention of our lawmakers before we shift gears and look at our local school board agenda.
Yeah, just a couple more I'd add in there. We made sure to talk with them about ways we can elevate the profession of educators and make sure that there are incentives and there are pathways that help in not only recruiting but retaining and treating our educators well. We advocated for student loan forgiveness for educators specifically, and to do it in a way that is not cumbersome and is relevant, and because some of those things exist, but the hoops you have to jump through are so challenging that it's almost not worth it for someone to engage that way. I have mixed feelings about loan forgiveness in general, but when it comes to educators, I think there's a real argument to back up why there should be some loan forgiveness for them, and to make the pathway to becoming an educator for our kids attractive.
And especially in some areas and places that are, outlying communities where they've had trouble recruiting teaching professionals because they're simply isolated, and not everyone is willing to kind of take the plunge, leave their families, graduate from college and then head out to a very remote high desert community. So yeah,
it can be challenging to recruit to outlying areas, and we're doing a pretty good job right now of growing from within and figuring out how to fill those holes. Just again, reaching out to who we can and where we can to provide support so that we can help our staff out.
CJ Anderson is our Elko County School Superintendent as we're getting caught up in school news in advance of the Tuesday, July 16th regular school board meeting. Among the agenda items, and this is something that it's important we really highlight, that this is available to the community. This is a transparent process. This is your chance to look over 5-year capital improvement plans, to review, what the school board is considering, and then to advise the school board. You don't have to go to the meeting. You can watch online, or you can simply review documents at the school district website, CJ, and then you can make your comments to either the board collectively or even individually. But it's a really important thing that if you're, going to be on the end of, say critiquing something, that you have all the information. And this 5-year capital plan is a really good place to kind of insert yourself to see what's being planned, because this plan is fluid, right? It can be changed.
Yes. Some things are pretty standard and set in stone, like our contracts and things like that. But when it comes to our capital improvement plan, that is something that is by necessity fluid. If you were to compare the proposed plan that's on tomorrow's agenda to the plan that showed up last year to the one that showed up the year before, like they're different. They just are. That's because the needs at our buildings change. Especially when every time we come out of a winter, it's like, okay, well, this thing no longer functions the way it's supposed to, so that's now a problem, and we now need to address it, right? So those things change, and especially this year, there's been a kind of a pretty drastic update to the conversation surrounding our capital improvement plan. Going into last year, we had our needs that we knew existed, and we'd also had a full facilities assessment done, but there was no real tangible awareness of any funds that were going to be coming in. So, a lot of it was just kind of hypothetical and theoretical based on what funds we had left and not knowing what was going to be coming in the future. So, since last year's, we now have a tax rate that has been committed by the county, and that came with very specific priorities that we indicated to the county. We are we are committing to applying X money that you have said you will allocate to X projects, right? And so, there's projects on here that didn't exist before because we didn't have the funds for them before, and we've made a promise that that's what we're going to work on, and so we're being true to that, and so those show up definitely on this plan this time around.
There's nothing really grand in scope or scale. A lot of it is ongoing maintenance, HVAC systems, repairing concrete. I mean, some of the basics, right? And every campus needs something.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of things on there that are, the largest one, which is not new to the plan, it was on the last year's plan, is the Spring Creek High School CTE building, which was recently approved by the board, I think it was a month or two ago. So that's on there. And then, everything else is, there's no like new builds, right? It's all the school violence prevention project that I had mentioned earlier. It's roof, it's mechanical upgrade, it's HVACs, it's asphalt, things we need to, like, they're pretty important just to keeping the building operating, right? It's not anything grandiose, at least on the first part. Further down on the capital improvement plan, there's information about the Owyhee school that is currently in bidding process right now, and so that does show up. That is a new building, but just want to aside from the fact that the money is coming from the state and we are all state taxpayers, the money for that project came from a specific bill, not specifically from any county funds or from a tax rate within the county specifically.
Right. It's important to maybe look at that as a gift, or it's certainly an opportunity, and then it got conversations going too about funding capital needs for schools. Something that's also in the capital plan, this you inherited this, and as a school superintendent, in fact, because it's below ground, not many people know it exists, and that is our decades-old geothermal system. So recent conversations are, whether or not we're going to be using geothermal in the future. There are two loops within the community. One is a privately held Elko heat company, and there are some private businesses and even some homes that are on this system. It's in the city. And then there's the public loop, as we refer to it as. ECVA, Great Basin College is not on it because apparently wasn't powerful enough to heat those buildings. But long story short, CJ, I guess as far as we understand, there's still some Elko schools that are on the geothermal system, right? And so there's an interest in this.
Yeah, absolutely. So that system could service both Flagview Intermediate as well as all the buildings at Elko High School, and then it could even run up to our administrative buildings as well. And so, yeah, it's something that has benefited many entities in the community for decades. Sometime prior to my arrival into Elko, even before this as a superintendent, before I came here as a principal, it had kind of ceased to work. And we've been in a situation where it's a very valuable resource that, we'd love to be able to make use of. But because of the nature of how just totally inoperable the system was at that point, due to decades of wear on the system and the pipe in the ground, it just became unusable. And so, we have been for about a year actually exploring options for how to get that up and running again. But again, acknowledging that we alone don't have it's a millions dollar project. It's hard to give a number to it, but it's 7 to 12, like it's a big number of millions of dollars, which, given the other priorities we have, we can't prioritize that in its entirety. And so, in trying to collaborate with partners, trying to find federal incentive grants that could potentially offset a huge portion of that cost. And so, we always want to make sure that geothermal resource is kind of, not the forefront of our minds, but present in our plans, so that we have dollars available to commit to that project should we find that, hey, there is an opportunity and we can get it back up and running.
Because otherwise you'd have to pay to convert some of the systems, and that's another expense, right?
So our systems are, most of them, and I may be getting a little underwater here with this one, but I think our systems are set up in such a way at least for Flagview and for Elko High School, that they have the availability already to tie in. So they exist in such a way that they can run without, but they can also run with. But if you run them with, there's a significant energy cost savings for them. And sometimes that's a tough conversation for people is, hey, how can we justify spending X amount of dollars on something that's only going to save us this much a year? Well, when you add that up over the course of time, and you also consider the cost of upgrading new systems or HVACs, that type of thing. You also consider, just having a valuable resource that's going unutilized and it's better for the environment. There's a lot of reasons to consider doing it. Not necessarily if you don't have the money on your own, but if there's a way to collaborate with others to get it going again, it can make some sense. And so, it's a valuable resource that we'd love to see functioning again for our community.
We know that City Hall has backed away. They've been on it, but now they have a system of boiler that's using natural gas. And so they voted June of last year that they would not participate in the geothermal loop. But I understand that the agreement that the school board will eventually consider, you'll have a chance to kind of opt back in if you need to, even if the Boys and Girls Clubs end up running the geothermal system.
Yeah, so the Boys and Girls Club, they are one of the partners that we're looking at working with, and they would not be the ones running the system. The system would still belong to us and would operate under us. It would obviously be of great use to them, given the future project that they have coming. But this current resource that we talk about, the wellhead of this geothermal loop, is property of the Elko County School District, so we own it. It would continue to be ours regardless of how we move forward with this. So we would be granting access to them, and like you said, anyone else. There is opportunity for people to opt in. As I mentioned, this is a conversation because, as is evident, the city said no about a little over a year ago. So that means we've been talking about it for over a year, so over that time, we've been exploring a lot of different possibilities for how to make this work again, and it's the picture's starting to become a little clearer. And so we're trying to figure out again interest levels, because at the time when we initially got in the conversations, without a lot of answers to questions, it was hard for people to say yes or no, or really to feel like they could even commit. And so now there's a little more awareness, but there is still great interest in moving forward with it, regardless of who wants in now or not. And so, should it be up and running again, and we're able to find out a great solution, then we'd leave opportunity for people to come back in, and because otherwise, it's not really it's hard to call it a full community resource when it's only being utilized by one or two entities, right? And so, to making that available for people, obviously, anyone who wants to get in on any sort of resource, like there are costs associated with that, right? You'd have, like, in order to tie into it, that's going to cost money. In order to really be fair and benefiting from something, like if a bunch of money was put up front for something, well, it's probably fair to say, hey, you need to have a portion of that too. And so, figuring out the nitty gritty of that's great lawyer work and and executive work. But yeah, definitely a pathway that we would want to make sure people could get back into it.
All right. Thanks, CJ, for the update on that. So that'll be discussed, I think, at least it's included in the 5-year capital improvement plan. So nice to know that will continue to be an Elko County School District resource, as it was intended to be all those years ago. So
yes.
Thank you, CJ. Other things that might jump out either on the agenda, you're going to give your facilities construction update. As you mentioned, the CTE building is probably in there. Quarterly update report. Not sure what that's just in general.
Yeah, so, we have various departments at central office, and we try to leave a space at not every meeting, but many meetings for quarterly updates. And so that one's going to be a financial update. So we're going to have both our new CFO, Cassie Stalkey, as well as our new grants coordinator. We got one, Megan Cox. Apologies to the county who we stole her from. So we want our board to meet our new grants coordinator, and then and just to give a picture on on what we're doing, because as I mentioned before, and is no mystery, ever since a few years ago, with the change in funding and the net sweep of proceeds of mines and other decline in enrollment that we've had in the last year or so, as revenue has decreased, there needs to be adjustments to spending and budgeting, and so we're just trying to give them a good picture and keep them updated so there aren't any surprises with our finances. So just letting them know how we're doing, and so that's what that one's about.
All right, that'll all be included in Tuesday's regular school board meeting, 5:30 p.m. The boardroom is at 850 Elm Street, that's school district central office. Again, you can participate online, and you can read all the documents in advance of the meeting too. And I guess too, obviously, if there's anything you want to close out with, I want to make sure that parents and caregivers are aware of the Kids Cafe. It's hosted by Food Bank of Northern Nevada in partnership with communities in schools in northeastern Nevada. It's free meals for kids ages 2 through 18, and every Wednesday, now through August 21st, you stop by the office at 346 7th Street in Elko. That's communities and schools, and between the hours of noon and 3 on Wednesdays, and then families can pick up a weekly meal box. There are 7 breakfasts and 7 lunches, and you must have the kids with you during pickup. It's just a way of, some accountability. But this is one of the programs that we will continue to need community support for because, frankly, our federal funding is waning for these kinds of programs.
Yes. Isn't Communities in Schools so great?
Aren't they amazing?
They are such an incredible organization. Yeah. They support our schools so much. We're very happy to partner with them. Going into this school year, we've added some more Communities in Schools positions, and then very excited, something that you won't see readily on the agenda but is on the consent agenda, is an MOU with Communities in Schools. We recently renewed it, but then they noticed an express of interest and made a commitment to us to not going into this school year, but going into next school year to add a couple more of our schools to the list of schools that they support. And so we're so grateful for them. We love our partnership with them and all the things they do. And what an awesome opportunity. And what I love about this, and generally, it's not just this, but this is an example of something that I truly love is that communities where schools are the most successful are communities where people all come together. Nothing with the great variety of needs that exist for our students and for our families, unique to our community. There's no one entity that can take care of everybody's needs, and so it's a beautiful thing when the Food Bank of Northern Nevada, when Communities in Schools, with the school district, with Elko Federal Credit Union, with Nevada Gold Mines, with Kinross, Bald Mountain, like when all those, and I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but I also don't want to just fill up airtime with naming every entity in our community. But like when those people and those entities come together to try to meet needs together, that is what creates a strong community. It's not finger pointing at whose job it is to do something. It's not claiming that it wasn't your responsibility. It's really coming together, saying, hey, what are the needs? How do we meet these? And how do we support each other? What gaps exist and who can maybe help fill that? Because it's unreasonable to think that anyone's going to be able to handle that on their own. So we are super proud to partner with them and appreciate all they do, as well as the other folks that I just mentioned and the many others from our Chamber of Commerce and people in our community who step up all the time. So love that. Thank you for sharing that resource. Sorry, it turned into a greater conversation, but
no,
but I think it's important to note.
Absolutely. Our superintendent is CJ Anderson. This is why we have these conversations in our community, CJ, and thank you for, expressing your support, because you're right. We're only as good as the people who step up to help in times of need, and that we have a lot of needs, and this organization, and in particular, they don't come with an agenda. They come in response to a need that's from within the community. So that's what they're answering. So, and if you want to participate in that in a larger cooperative way, you can go to a website which is justserve.org. That website, I've found CJ is really doing things quietly behind the scenes as well. If a senior citizen needs something done around their house or a civic group needs a project, I mean, they're making a huge difference in a very quiet way. And we're probably going to need some more of that going forward. So thank you.
I love justserve.org. I've interacted with that for well over a decade now. If you've never heard of it, it's a great place to go, whether you want to have an impact on a me and my kids go do service for someone level, or if you want to do it as a youth group at church or your entire corporation, there are ways that you can contribute, and justserve.org does a great job of kind of catering or tailoring opportunities for service based on what your availability is, what your capacity is, etc. So yeah, justserve.org is awesome. Good plug.
Thanks, CJ. And thanks. And don't forget our Family Engagement Center. They're also part of our school district. Find all this online, Elko County School District, ecsdnv.net. We appreciate your time as always, CJ. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk with you again.